got to do a very, very exciting thing this morning. One of the things we all love to do on our birthdays: go to the DMV. My license was expiring, and I went to the DMV and did the real ID paperwork as well. So I think I am set now with that. Well, I know I'm set. I got my picture taken, I got my receipt done. So I do believe that I'm set, and that's good, so that I can have everything I need done and be ready to go. Our first thing we're doing with the sabbatical is flying to Alabama, and I'm doing a wedding for a friend, and then we're going to the lake house. And so I really need to have my new driver's license by then. And so I hope it comes before then. I believe it will, but that's the plan. So need to have a new driver's license since they said 2 weeks about. So I hope they give themselves more time. So they're kind of like, oh, we'll just make sure it gets to you in that time. So um, yeah, we'll see. I guess because 2 weeks, I think we're leaving in 2 weeks. So hopefully it comes. Um, and that will be good. I have a temporary, so I think that should be fine as well. Okay. Um, we are studying the First Peter, Second Peter, Leviticus, Isaiah, and the interesting thing about these passages here, especially in Leviticus and Isaiah, is Leviticus points us back to some laws, so the laws of cleanliness and purification, also the love of neighbor is what it says there. And if you go back, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So if we go back to Leviticus, here's 19, ritual and moral holiness. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to all the congregations of the people of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. You shall each revere your mother and father, and you shall keep the Sabbaths. I am your Lord your God. Do not turn to idols or make cast images for yourselves. I am the Lord your God. Now, I think the study is ending, right? We're wrapping up, and we're going to do Revelation next week, and then we're going to spend time kind of debriefing and thinking about the things that we've learned. And they're turning their eyes to this. We've seen the Old Testament. We've seen the wonderful love that God has for us in protecting his people, saving his people. He has been consistently pursuing his people. And so we have that to be encouraged by, to understand and to love. And so I think it's good that we remember those things. Robert Jensen, God is whoever raised Jesus Christ from the dead, having before raised Israel from Egypt. God is the saving one. He is the one who does those actions of bringing back to life, raising up. And that's the God that we worship, is the God who saves, the God who loves, the God who restores, okay? So all of those things about who God is are true, are good, are important. So it's important for us to remember that. God is holy, as we hear, and so he is the Holy One who has saved us. Because he saves us, we then look back to him and say, how then should we live? Who should we be? We've seen the Old Testament. We've seen Jesus Christ raised from the dead. We've heard Paul encourage his people. And hopefully, while you've been on this journey with us, you've been growing in your faith. You've been rediscovering things about Jesus that you maybe had forgotten, or discovered something brand new about him that you didn't know before. And so all of these things are hopefully things that are bubbling up within you, a love for God, for his kingdom, for his people, and you just want to serve him. And that's what the holiness verses are about. They are about making us a distinct people. In our sin, in our brokenness, in the things that have happened to us, in the fact that we're fallen, we are good at sinning. It's a natural behavior of us. We come by it quickly, we do it quickly, we make mistakes, we fall away, we turn our eyes to the wrong things, we best, and even when we try our best, we end up hurting somebody. We don't try our best, and sometimes good things happen. Even if we don't try our best, we get confused at those different things. This whole lifestyle, this whole living out of what God has called us to, is is difficult because of sin, because of the fact that the old Adam dwells within us. The old Adam wants to destroy us. So God calls us to be like him. He calls us to be a unique people, and not in order to be saved. And that is one of the most important things for us to remember. As you're going through this study, as you are hopefully having bubblings in your stomach about Jesus and how much he loves you and fallen in love with him in a deeper and more meaningful way, and wanting to serve him, wanting to give your time to him, wanting to do more things. Like hopefully that's what this is all producing. One of the things that I've always thought about disciple is it does really good at keeping our eyes down, right? We are reading, we are studying, we are learning. But if our eyes down don't ultimately lead to us lifting up our eyes and seeing our neighbors out of compassion, seeing a world that is struggling with sin and illness and hurt, and if that doesn't happen, if that move doesn't happen, then this move is not as important. Yes, it's good for us to grow, but it needs to be poured out. The illustration that I think of is I think of God's Spirit, right, like a water coming into this cup. And we in Disciple are receiving this filling up. We're receiving the filling up by reading the Word. We're hearing my words spoken. You're studying. You're considering new things. You are showing up on the Zoom call and you're talking about these things of faith. And all of that is pouring out God's Spirit and filling up your cup. But what has to happen eventually? Well, either the cup starts to overflow and all of that liquid is wasted, or we pour out. We pour out into somebody else. We are filled up to be poured out. Filled up to be poured out. Now, the other thing is, for seasons of our life, we are not in these kind of studies, right? We are not taking time daily to read scripture. We're not looking at a video regularly. We're not showing up to the Zoom call. Those different things happen. And then it's like this. The water is hitting the side of the cup because the cup is not in the position to be filled up by the Spirit. And what happens to the water? Well, the cup is there, but the water is going all around. It's not engaging, being filled up with the gospel in order to be poured out. Filled up to be poured out. We, with First Peter, with Leviticus, with Isaiah, are considering that the model of our faith is Jesus Christ, the suffering servant, as you saw in Isaiah 53. The model is us being people who serve, us being people who fall in love with Jesus, who understand that he loves the world, so that then we turn and we want to serve with him. Now, this is why I said it's important that you don't see your being holy, where Christ says, or God says, be holy as I am holy here in Leviticus, that you don't see that as a burden. You don't see that as well, if I'm not holy, God's not going to love me. No. You not being holy helps you to realize how much you need the love of God. You making mistakes, you being broken, helps you to need to recognize that your only hope is for God to save you, and he does. And then when God saves you, you look back and you say, thank you. Thank you for saving me. How now can I serve? Now, that being saved, being taken out of the miry clay, being taken from the depths of the ocean and dead in sin and resurrected, brought back to life, that's justification. That's God bringing new life, new people, and bringing life where there was death. That's what that is. Sanctification, then, is the process, which is always after justification, the process of being made holy. The process of having our lives produce fruit, having our lives give out new life to others, pouring out into others, following God and trying to take in his will and do his will in our lives, trying to avoid the things that lead to death and destruction. All of that. That is the grace and love of God poured out in sanctification, which always happens after justification. We are made holy. How? Because of Christ's work for us. We are then called into holy living because God has died for us, and in response to his love for us, we can do nothing but serve. Um, I think about grandmas and their little Brad books. That's what they called them in Birmingham. Before phones, where you could just take out your phone and swipe and show all the pictures of your grandbaby. You have these little books, right, that you store with pictures. You say, "Oh, let me show you my new grandbaby." And when you had a grandchild, there was no class to learn how to brag about your grandchild. No, you were just excited because this child who you bore is now had a baby who you have the privilege of loving. And you are so excited that you want to tell everybody about them. It's not you're not trying to figure out, well, what's the right way that grandparents discuss their grandchildren, or what is the correct parenting style, and making sure I only say the right things about grandparenting. No, you, out of your enthusiasm and love for your grandbaby, you tell other people. That is the same as Christ. He has done so much for us. He has done everything. He's taken us from death and brought us to new life. So now we can pour ourselves out in service. And that is just saying, look at what God has done for me. It's the Brad book. Do you know my Jesus? Do you know the things he's done? Do you know how he's taken me, the least of the apostles, taken me, the worst of sinners, and done new life in me? That's what Christ can do for you too. And it's just simply telling that wonderful story. It's being full of that life. And this is what makes us unusual people. Because we're going to celebrate then holiness. We're going to celebrate things that lead to life. Sometimes they're more difficult. Sometimes it's more difficult to do the thing that Christ calls us to do. To love that person who's our enemy. I mean, that's always difficult. To give away our resources instead of hoarding them in order to help ourselves. Those are the kinds of things that God calls us into so that we can show his love to the world. And that's what God has for us. And so I think it's exciting for us to recognize how different we are than the world because of what Christ has done for us. How unusual we are, how unique we are because of what God has done for us. And so I encourage you then to consider this time, this study, this thing that we've done together, and start to remember what are some of your favorite things about the God who loves us. What are some of the things you've learned about Jesus through the Old Testament, through the New Testament? What are some things that causes you to be excited about serving your neighbor, serving your enemy? What are some of those things? So that we can get that enthusiasm over the God who died for us, the God who loves us, the God who set us free. And a great time to start jotting those things down is in this book, to be encouraged by what Christ has done for us. Okay, I wanted to spend some time just doing that with us because as we're wrapping up, I think it's really important that we consider where we've been. And the ultimate goal, again, is for our eyes to turn from just studying to seeing our neighbor, to seeing our world, to giving the love of God to the next person we meet, bragging about what Jesus has done for us. And so let's have that movement come about. Let's be open to God pushing you into new places because you've been studying. Let's be open to new conversations that you never felt comfortable before, but now you do because of what Christ has done. Okay? Okay. Let's